so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on this show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's powwow episode, I am very excited to have Alicia Lynn Diaz here with me on the show. Alicia is a radical self-healing practitioner and founder of the Enlightened Body System, which helps people release trauma and connect to their higher self. Hey there, Alicia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to connect, especially on such a wonderful topic as this, one that is always relevant. And, that's really the sort of the center point of the show. How do we connect to our higher self? And there's so many different aspects to that. So I very much look forward to digging in with you here and getting some wisdom, gaining some new wisdom and insight. Before we do that, I would like to start with the same question I always like to start off with. And the question is, you're in an elevator. The guy next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" What do you say?
Love.
All right. And we have a bunch of floors left to go.
It's interesting. A friend of mine just asked me this past weekend. I'm in Hawaii at the moment, and we went on a really beautiful nature adventure. And he turned to me, he was like, "What's your superpower? Like, what do you think is your superpower?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a great question." And I was like, I love loving people. And I'm very passionate about showing people how to not just love themselves, but actually tap into that power that exists inside of them that is the cohesive force of all of nature. It's the attractive force of all of life that creates emergent properties in the universe, that creates life, that creates the earth, that creates healthy, thriving cells. And it really, to me, all comes back to that fundamental principle, that power of love. And it brings me the warm fuzzies. I love it in that perspective, but it also,
me too.
Is like it's a powerful force. So I love that question. Yeah. What a cool way to start.
So what's great, I love your answer because, as the listeners know, my favorite quote is, "Love is the answer. What was the question?" And that's John Lennon. And I absolutely love that. And the other reason I know this is going to be a really great conversation and we're going to get along marvelously is I spent all last week, at the time of recording this anyway, it was just last week that I was in Costa Rica with the Superhero Academy meetup of 130 true superheroes, then on to Envision Festival down in Costa Rica. And I spent several days there doing mini interviews with all the different people that were a part of the Superhero Academy Mastermind meetup. And that was my question over and over and over and over again. What is your superpower? So that has been a theme for me. It seems to be carrying forward to now. So I love that. And I look forward to hearing more about your superpower. Before
so cool.
We go into all the details of what you do and Enlightened Body System and everything, what I think would be great is to have a little context, some background on your story, where you've come from, where you're at, where you're going, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different stories I could obviously tell. I think in the context of the Enlightened Body System, and since that's maybe part of the direction that you'd like to go and share, really what brought me down the path of all things related to self-healing and empowering others and growth and deep inner work was tragedy in my own life and tragedy in my own body and despair, which, I really am a believer that the wound is where the light enters. And that was my own personal experience. And so back when I was born and raised in New York on Long Island, and very, very ambitious when I was younger, and always very clear that my path had to do with health and helping others heal. And so I've always been fascinated by science and healthcare. And I went down the path of athletic training, and I was an athlete and did my master's degree in exercise physiology. So I was a clinical physiologist and working with athletes in optimizing performance all the way down to debilitating health situations like cardiopulmonary disease, where people could barely walk or just do their activities of daily living. And for a couple of years, I ran a clinic in New York City and was an adjunct professor at a university on Long Island teaching physiology. And I really super loved it. I knew it was a stepping stone to something greater, that it was this foundation of health. And we were kind of actually on the fringe edges of complementary alternative medicine, even though I worked on teams with Western doctors and practitioners and things like that. But because we were movement-based therapy and trying to work with how the body can move to heal itself, whether it was cardiopulmonary or whether it was orthopedic, we were more of like a little bit alternative, right? So it kind of started bridging me into that world. And at the same time, I started being really drawn to yoga and meditation. And I studied at this ashram in the West Village of Manhattan and really went deep in a very traditional setting. So I got to take my yoga teacher training and start meditating. And I started bringing that into the clinic and just really experiencing a lot of beauty. And the patients that came to the clinic were reporting things back to me that I never would have expected. Like they were healing faster and they were getting better sleep at night and they were feeling calm throughout the day. And like things that I really like, this is my first experience, hearing anything like that. And I was like, I remember those moments of just being kind of taken back and being like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. And at that time, during the yoga teacher training, I was introduced to Ayurveda, a system of ancient Indian medicine. And then tragedy hit. So I was turned on to all these things, started laying the foundation, and then my body started breaking down. And I was experiencing some really intense digestive symptoms, reproductive symptoms, migraine headaches, anxiety, panic attacks. All these things kind of like all came to a head. I lost a family member tragically, and my relationship ended. So it was kind of like everything came to a head and everything was breaking down around me and really causing me to question everything that I had, built up to that point. And I knew that something had to change. I knew that something had to shift. And I knew I was in tremendous pain and I didn't know what to do with it. all the doctors I went to, it was just dead ends. It was prescriptions and, lifelong sentence to take some pill or cream or something for the rest of my life. And I just knew that that wasn't okay with me. And that system of Ayurveda just stood out to me. And I was like, I felt like that was my ticket to freedom, and I was going to trust that. So I made a major shift, and I left that whole identity and all those roles and everything behind. I set out west, set towards San Diego, and dove into personal development, emotional healing, all kinds of different things like that. And didn't know it at the time, but so many of the symptoms I was experiencing were rooted in PTSD that I had repressed from childhood trauma. So that was a link. I had no awareness of it at the time. But here I go. I set off west. I invest all of my savings and money into Tony Robbins and all these different personal development. And as I'm meeting people and I'm telling them my dream of studying Ayurveda, I get connected with an incredible person who connected me with someone else who was connected to this enlightened doctor, healer, master healer in India, who was also the doctor to the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa. And he kind of did a soul tune-in with me and invited me to come out there and apprentice under him, which was an incredible honor because he doesn't have a school and he had the same apprentices, doctors for the last 12 to 25 years, the same people that would apprentice with him. So it was an incredible honor for me to go out there. So took a leap of faith, mentored under him in his clinic, and watched day in and day out people lining up outside of the clinic with all these irreversible, incurable, terminal illnesses coming to his door and walking out healed or coming back to get checked. And the things that they had written on their chart were resolved. And this blew my mind open because I'm like, in our Western paradigm, none of this is possible. What do you mean this is what you're doing every day with every week with hundreds of people at your door? And so it reinstilled some faith, for me in everything that I was experiencing, and also gave me insight as my awareness was growing, as I was doing these practices, as I was taking the herbs, as I was doing the things I was learning, as I was embodying the teachings and being in the presence of these masters. I was also seeing more deeply and observing some of the subtle layers of what was going on underneath the surface. I wasn't actually explicitly taught them, but it was like a transmission, right? So then I went on to formally study. He introduced me to my next teacher. I went on to formally study and get another degree in Ayurveda and start my clinical practice. And, and then ultimately I totally invite you to ask me questions at this point, to bring me back into where you wanted to go. But essentially over time, as I continued to learn and study and grow in all these ways, there were some things that shifted in my body. It created some physiological safety and a rhythm that my body could reattune to nature, which kind of reinstated the cellular intelligence, if you will, and simultaneously created enough safety in my nervous system to access, and in my psyche, to access these deeper levels of trauma and PTSD that had been imprinted on me in early years of life. And these memories start coming back. And then I start actually getting to the deeper energetic root cause of how that was playing out in my physical symptoms. It was as if the physical symptoms were actually trying to get my attention to resolve those deeper traumas, but I couldn't resolve the deeper trauma until my body was actually safe enough to do so. And I could actually create a pathway for everything that was held on to leave. So that's essentially how my work has evolved, was a lot from my own personal experience and my witnessing, and sharing as I went with the clients that I would work with in my practice, and start to see how the patterns, I watch the patterns and how they play out, and able to shorten the timelines for people to get the results faster, because I've seen it so many times and have witnessed it so many times with the teachers, with these master teachers, and how potently they do it. So
Right.
So yeah,
What a blessing.
That's such biggest blessing. Yeah, I'm so grateful.
Now, in your experience, then, would you say, and this is something that seems to come up more and more, that, disease or any issues in the body are always, somehow connected to emotions or trapped emotions or energy blockages in the body that are emotional in nature? Would you say that is what you've discovered in your journey?
Absolutely. And the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual cannot be separated from one another. So from my perspective, it's not enough to say disease is only trapped emotion or energetics, because it does have to be met on the physical level, but it can't only be met on the physical level, right? So yes, I believe that they go hand in hand, and it's unique and different for each person. And it's not just like a blanket statement of like, oh, so there's some trapped emotions, right? Like we have to get really specific and really look at the unique influences that life circumstances had in different people's experiences, and how their unique body internalized that.
Now you talk about the different stages of disease and the connection to the emotions. Could you take a moment and kind of explain how, it makes total sense what you just saying is like, look, everyone is a unique case. We're all unique beings and have our own kind of unique trajectories and way that things will or won't manifest in our world. But it sounds like, with all the experience that you've had, you've also seen certain patterns, and part of that patterning is stages that unfold. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. So first off, the stages, and these are fairly general stages. The way they unfold in different people would be unique in different pathologies, but I'll give you the stages overall and we can go into more detail. So there's the 6 stages of disease progression. Start with stage 1. You can think of stage 1's called the accumulation phase. So that's where, say, physical or energetic or emotional toxins, but we'll just use physical. It's the easiest way to illustrate the 6 stages. So physical toxins build up in the system. They overflow. They start to imagine if your pipes in your sink got clogged, the toilet gets clogged, right? They can't move out. Waste starts accumulating. So that can start in the gut or in the channels of elimination not working properly. So toxins start accumulating. And then in stage 2, they get provoked, which means they start spilling over. Stage 3, they start spreading. Once they spill over from the gut and the channels of elimination can't get them out, they spill over into the bloodstream. And then once they're in the bloodstream, stage 3 is they start spreading. So now they're spreading through the blood because they've backed up so far. And those toxins are looking for somewhere to go because they're still getting backed up. So unless they're cleared at this point, once they're in the bloodstream, they can manifest as a number of things. They can manifest as hives and rashes. They can manifest as acne. They can manifest as fever. They can manifest as fatigue, exhaustion, total body, a little bit of like excessive stiffness in the body, things like that. Stage 4, now once they're spreading, they're looking for a place to deposit. Stage 4 is the deposition stage. And in stage 4, they're depositing in one of your 7 bodily tissues. And what determines where they're going to deposit is the strength and the resiliency of some of the gatekeepers of those 7 bodily tissues. This is the cellular intelligence. This is like the guard standing at the doorway to each of these cells or each of these tissues. And if the guard is weak, those toxins are going to flood over and take over that tissue, which then those toxins deposit. And in stage 5, it is the manifestation stage. That's when it manifests into disease. And stage 6 is called the differentiation stage, which the tissue actually differentiates from a healthy, living, thriving cell. You can think of it as the case of cancer, right? The actual cell mutates to look at like something different. Now, stages 5 and 6, just a side note, those 2 stages are where a Western diagnostic instruments can actually test. Stages 1 through 4 are usually when a doctor will say, there's nothing, we haven't found anything, but you can still have tremendous pain in all 4 of the first stages.
Gotcha. And so what is the connection? I mean, how would someone, okay, so that's very much, kind of giving us an idea of the physical flow of how things work. And I've never really sort of heard it laid out like that. And it's very sort of interesting and I guess somewhat useful to know, but really the core is what starts, what is 0, right? How does all that even begin? And I assume emotions do have something to do with that.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing me back to the emotions too. So 2 things. So I'll talk about the emotions and then we'll go back to what's 0. So the emotional aspect. So I mentioned briefly in stage 4, the gatekeepers. So these gatekeepers, as I'm terming them here, are their strength is determined by a few different factors. And the gatekeeper resiliency, which would be the toxins can't take over that tissue if the gatekeeper is really strong. So this is where some of the emotional patterns can come into play, because the emotional repression, so bottled up emotions, emotional trauma, which a trauma here I define as any situation or circumstance that you weren't able to emotionally process at the time that it was happening. So that could be a number of things. Anything that overwhelmed you, that you weren't able to fully reconcile and process down to neutrality, can be experienced in your physiology as a trauma. So when you think back to your life and you say, oh, I don't have any traumas, or I was never traumatized by anything major, think back to either, well, where was I not feeling free in, like, where, or trauma can also be epigenetically inherited. There's studies that have been shown where 3rd generation Holocaust survivors who never experienced what their grandparents experienced have the same reaction in their body as trauma, even though they never experienced it. So it's still measurable in their body. And so when you think of what was the struggle that was passed down to me through my parents or my grandparents and my lineage, and could I have a predisposition to any of those things? Or, I'm going off on a tangent, but those are 2 of the ways that the emotional aspect can really weaken.
That's incredible.
The resiliency of the tissue.
That's really incredible to take into account that, these things that can be passed on, just in your lineage. And you hear that all the time in sort of this, spiritual circles, like, healing your ancestral wounds and things like that. But when you have like any sort of measurable way to really show that, that's really fascinating.
Well, and since you just brought up the measurable way, there's a whole study, like, for listeners who are interested in going deeper in this topic. If you've never heard of the ACE study, I'd highly recommend you check it out. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And these were studies done on tens of thousands of people, and it quantified early childhood experiences. And you can go through an actual quiz and to understand if what your ACE score is out of 10. And basically what they found was that almost all chronic illnesses, people have 1, 2, or more ACEs. And the more ACEs you have, they're directly correlated to your risk of lots of pretty much the top 7 out of 10 all causes of morbidity and mortality, meaning death and suffering and illness. So, and then also suicide rate and all kinds of things. So having multiple ACEs increases like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 80% increase of getting autoimmune disease if you have 2 or more ACEs, like those types of things. So there's a whole huge body of knowledge that I'm so happy to see that's starting to really flourish in the holistic and just the medical community, that they're starting to really acknowledge how this is really impacting people, how these adverse experiences, and even more so than what they have on the quiz, like there's lots of experiences that aren't accounted for in the ACE study or in the quiz that are still registered as trauma, like birth trauma and being bullied as a kid, or like, all kinds of different things. So that's definitely a point to consider when we're looking at the connection between emotions and physical health.
Yeah. And of course you mentioned epigenetics, and I think that is a really fascinating topic. I actually had Dr. Bruce Lipton on maybe a year or so ago. And and we, of course, with biology of belief, any of you guys out there listening who haven't heard me talk about, Dr. Bruce Lipton or heard that episode, I would definitely encourage going to check it out or checking out. He has like an hour-long YouTube video on, basically this whole study showing how our beliefs play such a huge role in these genes. We've always heard it's in our genes. It's in our genes. What we didn't hear is you actually turn genes on and off with beliefs, right? Yeah,
exactly.
So that's something that, all of this stuff is so encouraging when you start to understand. It sort of ties in this whole idea that we truly are empowered to go in, do the deep work, find where the emotional, I guess, damage you would say is done, go down paths of healing, change our belief systems, change our diets. All of these things are so self-empowering. Whereas, in the past, people have felt so like, well, it's in my genes and there's nothing I can do and I'm screwed and, oh, well, right. It's right. We're now learning that that's just the farthest thing from the truth. Tell us a little bit about, or a lot about your system that you've developed. What exactly is the Enlightened Body System?
So there's this is funny. I wouldn't expect this to come through for me in an interview, so I'm going to go ahead and share it. There's a definition of health in Ayurveda that is unlike any definition of health that I've really ever seen. And it goes, well, I'll share the Sanskrit. I'm a lover of the Sanskrit language. I read and write Sanskrit. I love it so much. It's a vibrational coded language that, to me, chanting Sanskrit, even especially the Ayurvedic sutras, because they hold these codes of health and vitality in the cells. So I teach a lot of my students and my apprentices, those that are interested in it. It's not a must, right? But I'm just interested in it. So I like sharing my joy. And, and like you feel the difference. So, is it okay if I share it with you and then I'll kind of translate it? Because it really it really envelops the essence of what we're doing in the Enlightened Body System, because the system itself has been developed to help the body actualize this definition of health.
Excellent. Please.
So the sutra says, Samadosha samagnisha samadatu malakriyaha prasanat mindriyamana svasta itya vidiyate. There's 2 parts.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. I usually sing it, but I'm just speaking it now.
Oh, what? What? Why are you holding out on us?
I dropped my headphones.
Oh, man. Yes, come on now. Don't hold out.
What I'll do, I won't hold out. But I will translate it quick, and then I'll sing it so that you can feel the translation.
I like this. I like the way it's going. All right.
I like being able to get our logical mind wrapped around something so that we can surrender into a sensational experience.
You know what's interesting little synchronicity is I just shared on the Positive Heads Facebook group earlier today, a few hours ago, a wonderful song by Snatam Kaur. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Do you know her? And the song that I share was Servant of Peace, I believe it's called. Or Instrument of Peace, one of the two. And the video that I shared is her singing and the whole thing being translated, because you can't, I'm not even sure what she's singing in the first half of the song. So it's funny because I literally just shared a song that is just so beautiful that had like the translation written under the words as she sang them.
Her work has been so impactful for me. And yeah, she sings the language, the Kundalini tradition language is called Gurmukhi. And it's, I'm not any expert in that by any means, but it's very, very beautiful. And it is a derivative of Sanskrit.
That's what I figured. I figured it might be. How perfect. What a beautiful synchronicity.
So that's really cool that you just posted. I'm going to have to see which song you posted. I'd love to hear it.
Yes, definitely. I'll add you to the group so that you can.
Thank you. Great. So the first part of this definition says samadosha, which means balanced bodily constitution. So that's where it comes back to our uniqueness. And this me going into this is also the answer. I want to tie it back to when you asked what's zero on the 6 stages. This is 0.
Beautiful.
Okay. I don't like leaving open loops. And so samadosha, so balanced constitution, bodily constitution. There's two aspects of what your body might be experiencing right now. One is the birth constitution that you were born in. You were born with a unique ratio of 5 elements that are in nature. So when you take on a physical body, you have a certain ratio on code of ether, air, fire, water, and earth that's unique to you. And each of those elements also has various qualities to each one. And they're functionally experienced in the body as 3 doshas, which you'll hear talked about in Ayurveda quite a bit. A lot of what is taught in Ayurveda currently, in my opinion, is very watered down and boxed. So if you have heard anything about what I'm talking about right now in terms of dosha or constitution, I invite you to listen with a really open mind and be like, oh, what does this mean to me in a deeper level, and feel the resonance versus being like, oh, okay, I know my body type, I know my dosha, because that's not actually what I'm saying here. But there is like a bodily constitutional type that you're imprinted with. But then there's something that varies from that. And when it varies, there's an excess of certain elements, which is part of the accumulation phase. So an excess of these elements accumulates in the body. Heat accumulates in the body. Maybe fire accumulates in the body. The fire gets dispersed. It starts creating inflammation. It starts creating problems. It starts creating, those hives and acne or whatever. It starts creating headaches. Air quality gets high. Your thoughts spiral out. You can't think straight. You can't think. It's hard to focus. It's hard to concentrate. Your mind wanders a lot. You have to really, really focus on your meditation practice, try to get it back in. Well, there's actually elements in your body that you don't have to will harder. There's actually elements in your body that are in excess that need to be brought back down to baseline. So that's what these balanced elements means. When you don't have the excess building up in your body for a number of reasons. I get that this is conceptual, and I'll tie it back in or answer any questions to help root it in a little bit more to personal experience. But this is when all of the aspects of your physiology from an elemental standpoint are working in harmony with one another.
Beautiful.
Samadosha, Sama-agnishcha. So this is also balanced digestive fire. So we know a lot in the holistic medicine realms today that a lot of health comes back to the gut. The gut, also what I will term here as the digestive fire, is not just digesting food. Your gut or your digestive fire also digests all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, all of your past experiences, and everything that comes in through your 5 senses, everything you hear, see, smell, taste, touch, all of these things are being digested by your digestive fire. One of the reasons why the disease process starts in stage 1, accumulation, all of that is because the digestive fire is too low. When the digestive fire is too low, it's like trying to cook a pot of rice without ever bringing it to a boil. Only have a certain amount of time. You have to bring it to a boil and reduce the heat and simmer, right? They need the right kind of proportion and ratios and all those different things, and the right heat. Well, if the heat stays on low the whole time, after 20 minutes, you're not going to have fluffy quinoa. You're going to have crunchy, wet, like inedible food. Well, that's what's happening in the gut. And that's why toxins, one of the reasons why toxins accumulate in the body and go through that whole process. Even if you're eating the most, organic, pristine, clean diet, if the digestive fire cannot absorb and assimilate those nutrients because the fire's too low, or it's dispersed out to somewhere else in the body, causing inflammation and not digesting your food, then the fire is compromised. So part of this definition of health is saying we have a robust fire. It's not too high. It's not too low. It is properly metabolizing the food that you eat, as well as the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and sensory experiences.
Wow.
Samadhatu. I'm really going into it with you.
I love it. That's perfect.
Balance in the 7 bodily tissues. So we have 7 bodily tissues. I'm not going to go super deep into all these, otherwise the lists just get long, and it's helpful if you can like write things down or whatever. But the 7 bodily tissues are called Rasa, Rakta, Mamsa, Meda, Asti, Majja, Shukra, and Artava. So they start with Rasa, your blood plasma, your red blood cells, your muscle tissue, your fat tissue. I do it in Sanskrit. I see your bone tissue, your nervous system tissue, and then your reproductive tissue. So in that order, these tissues are developed. So you eat food, first it becomes your blood plasma, then it becomes your blood cells, then it becomes your muscle tissue, then it becomes your bone, then it becomes, and it keeps getting more and more and more refined. One really cool thing that I'll share about the refining process is that your food becomes your body as it goes through these 7 tissues, and it gets more and more refined, and it comes back all the way down to your reproductive tissues, which are responsible in Ayurveda and these ancient wisdom traditions for producing the heartbeat. So the byproduct of the place in your body that is responsible for reproducing life is literally responsible for reproducing life in your own body with every single heartbeat. Wow. In the way that it fuels your sinoatrial node to fire. It's this beautiful, and such a beautiful poetry, right? This is 2 lines that I just spoke, and it means all of this. And, we're just halfway through. So these are all the physiological things. And it also, that the first half of the definition goes into making, there's your body's ability to eliminate toxins through urine, feces, and sweat, is optimized. So toxins are leaving, everything's digesting, you're good to go. So samadosha, samagnishcha, samadhatu, malakriyaha. That's all of what I just shared. The second half is the really juicy part. This is the part where we get into some of the subtle aspects. Ayurveda defines health as bliss in the soul, in the senses, and in the mind. Prasana, Atma, Indriya, Manaha. Bliss and pleasure in your soul, in your senses, and in your mind. That one threw me for a long time, because I had so much turmoil in my mind. I had so many dark thoughts and so much pain there that I was running away from. Yeah. I didn't know I was running away from it. But when I learned this stuff, I'm like, bliss in the mind? Like, are you kidding me? Someone can have that kind of relationship with their mind? What does that even mean? Right. Prasana, Atma, Indriya, Manaha. But it is possible. We can talk more about that. And then the last final word, svasta. Being fully established in the truth of who you are. Knowing yourself, essentially. Know thyself. If you know thyself, nothing else in that definition can actually happen, can actually be optimized. Your cells follow your lead. You are the leader of your cells. You are the leader of your cells. If you've never appointed yourself, your soul, as the leader of your cells, then the repressed fragments of your mind are unconsciously leading your cells, which will continue to manifest as chaos in the system. The body can't work in harmony unless the mind is working in harmony. And yes, if the body's harmony has gotten out of harmony, we need to meet it at the physical level because it has already gone out on the physical level. So we need to meet it on the physical level. But meeting it only on the physical level will not transform the energetic blueprint from which it is running. So both need to be changed. Both need to be upgraded. Both need to be accessed. The inner mastery, the inner work, the rewiring of the nervous system, the appointing of the soul as the leader of the subconscious mind, as well as the outer mastery, the physical practices, the how you live your life day to day in a way that creates an attunement with your cells, with nature. Those two things combined is what the Enlightened Body System is. So that definition being said, I'm going to just give you a quick experience of it. I'm just going to sing it a couple times so you can feel what's true for you. Because here's one thing that's really important for me, when I'm working with anyone or sharing this information with anyone, is that I do not want you to blindly follow anyone, myself included. I want you to take the wisdom that I've just humbly learned in my own path and the people that have helped me and have helped them. Take it into your own experience and feel what feels true for you. Because that's the only way we can be sovereign healers of our own life and our own reality and our own bodies, is that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And yes, we do need some support. We don't have to do it alone, but we ultimately get to choose. And so I just want to give you the opportunity to feel it and see what resonates based on what I just shared. Okay, so here's the definition of health. Samadosha samagnischa samadatu malakriyaha prasanatmindriyamanaha svasta ityabhidiyate. Samadosha samagnischa samadatu malakriyaha prasanatmindriyamanaha svasta ityabhidiyate.
Wow, that is beautiful. You have such a lovely voice too. And after all your explanation and everything, that is just so powerful. Thank you so much for going there.
My pleasure. Thank you for receiving. And it was a really cool way to just kind of illustrate what the Enlightened Body System is and does. It really marries that inner work, that inner mastery, that rewriting the blueprint of the underlying energetics, the blueprint that the cells expressed from, with marrying it with the physical outer mastery and aspect of how to sync up your body with the power of nature, so that those two things combined really create long-lasting transformation and vitality and energy. So thank you for your willingness and openness to receiving a little bit of some unconventional teachings.
I love the more unconventional, the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Obviously divinely inspired too. So I definitely appreciate that. All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. You know, speaking of mastery, I mean, one of the other things that you talk about is, three different sort of phases, I guess you will, of mastery: awakening, clearing, and connecting. Can you speak for a few on that, please?
Sure. Yeah. These three stages they are the three stages of the Enlightened Body System. What they essentially do is accelerate healing and create and actualize the potential. So in the first stage, the awakened stage, this is where the cellular intelligence gets activated. This is where the nervous system creates, resiliency. And I see it as, you could imagine if you're trying to repattern the mind and the body, and you have like a metaphor for this would be like a big rock. And we've all probably heard the term samskara if we're in this conversation. Samskara is a Sanskrit term that you may have heard in like yogic traditions. It's like a groove in the mind. It's kind of like the patterns that your body just innately plays out. Maybe not innately, they're programmed rather. Mm-hmm. They're programmed in the subconscious. So when we try to repattern our mind or these samskaras, you can take a chisel to the granite and then hammer it away and try to make a new pathway. Or you can soften the whole stone. Imagine you can just turn the stone into clay and then just make new grooves of the pathways that you want to ingrain. That's kind of like enhancing the neuroplasticity so that there's so much more grace in the repatterning. This is all the property of phase one, this awakening phase. Once that's done and the neuroplasticity is enhanced and there's a solid foundation, and also we're in the subconscious mind. When I mentioned the soul becomes the leader of the subconscious mind, it creates a deeper cohesiveness in the psyche. So right now, most of us, or one of the things that contributes to pathology is fragmentation of the psyche. All of the different aspects of ourselves, all the different archetypes inside are working against each other, and they're taking up bandwidth and energy, and they're all trying to survive on their own, and they're playing out these different patterns. Like the inner child, right, is doing one thing, trying to get its needs met unconsciously. The inner saboteur, your inner critic, is criticizing you, telling you you're not doing it good enough, whatever. The way these things are coming out are usually unconsciously playing. But what would happen if instead of in that your inner kingdom of your mind, instead of all these fragmentations of like everyone trying to survive on their own, you appoint a sovereign leader, your soul, your higher self, the wisest aspect of you, whatever you want to call it, gets appointed as this leader of the inner kingdom. Now it starts to create coherence and harmony between all the aspects of the psyche. And that's one of the things that creates really dramatic, quick, efficient shifts in the subconscious mind. And these are all analogies and metaphor. We could talk about it in different ways, but I like personifying, illustrating, works for me easily. It's just really, and it makes it lighter because this work can get heavy, right? It keeps it a little lighter and it's less personal when we're like, oh, these are just aspects of your inner archetypes kind of playing out, right? Your inner child. There's nothing wrong with you. your inner child needs some love. There's nothing,
Makes sense.
we don't need to shame your inner critic. There's some need that's not being met by that aspect of you. Let's find the deeper role that they play so that they can actually come into harmony in working with your body as a whole. And so that's what we're after and looking at. So that's all phase 1. Phase 2, the clear stage. This is where you clear the old patterns. And I kind of started bridging that in this conversation. But once that kind of sovereign appointment is made in the inner psyche, so to speak, there's, and the resiliency is created in the nervous system, and the safety is created in the nervous system. Now we can effectively clear the old trauma, the old blockages, whatever has been stuck in the cells can gracefully leave. Part of this practice and part of phase 1 is actually learning how to move the energy channels in the body and optimize the flow, dilate all the energetic meridians, the nadis, the channels, so that when these traumas try to leave and be expressed through you, they don't get stuck somewhere and cause more problems. That's one of the number one problems I see with just emotional trauma healing work by itself, is that people spiral down in it because there's never ending trauma to resolve. You'll never, as long as we're in these bodies, right? Maybe we could always be going after more and more and more and more and more. And it's a deep downward spiral. But doing the first phase, and it can create a healing crisis doing it that way. So doing it in this sequence actually creates so much more grace to be able to release those from the root without having to spiral out in them or recreate trauma. So it's very, very important to distinguish. And then what that leads to is stage 3, which is the connect phase. This is where you more effortlessly and easily connect to the higher wisdom that you have access to your higher mind. To this phase accelerates healing. It actualizes the dreams and visions that you have for your life and all of that. And these 3 stages are not just a linear stage. It's easy to look at it linearly, but I would love you to imagine that they are in a circle, a spiral. So you're spiraling through, because health and whatever we're looking at to create in our life is actually not a destination to be achieved. It is a dynamic dance with the evolution and the emergent properties of life. So it's a relationship between the moment to moment evolution, and we constantly cycle through these 3 things at rapid evolution takes place. So you're constantly awakening, clearing, connecting more deeply. And then maybe on another layer, you're going back into a new phase of awakening. And then there's more clearing and connecting. And it's actually an upward spiral of accelerated healing, rapid transformation, and exponential conscious awakening and growth.
Powerful, powerful insight. You teach quite a bit about, barriers to healing. And I think a lot of people can probably, relate to that, feeling like there's something in the way and they can't quite put a finger on it. What are your thoughts on that and what creates these barriers?
Yeah, there's a lot I could speak to on the barriers, but I'd like to just sum it up as one potent piece. And I'm going to illustrate this one with a story. The number one barrier to healing is the unsaid belief that you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I say number one, right? I could list them out. I've written a whole ebook on the barriers to healing and all the different ones and how they manifest. But this is the one that's coming through really strongly right now, because I just had a conversation with a student enrolling in one of my programs just a couple days ago. And as she was sharing her story with me, and I was listening, like just deeply listening between the lines, and she had been through a tremendous amount of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. She was subject to unsafe circumstances when she was younger, lots of things that had happened in her past. And she came to me looking for the root cause. She's like, I know you can help me. Like, I've heard you, speak on all these different topics. I know that there's more healing I need to do. I know that all of these emotional things have contributed to what I'm feeling physically right now. And She was in quite a lot of pain. And what I actually got from her is that the depth of the root cause answer was actually not that she had to look for more wounding or find the wound that was going to free her from the pain. What she had learned unconsciously through all those experiences was that she didn't know she had a choice. And what she had the opportunity to do instead was to recognize that she had the choice right now to choose something different for her life and for her health. And she was going through to practitioner after practitioner after practitioner, spending, tons of time and money and years trying to figure this out. Every holistic, every naturopath, every homeopathy, Chinese medicine, raw food diet, this diet, right? Like all of it. She tried all of it. None of it was working for her. Then she went to the emotional healing and EFT and all of that. I don't have anything against any of these things. Everything has a place in the system. She obviously grew and learned so much from all of that. But underlying all of it was this fundamental thing. She was still searching for all those answers outside of herself. She was still trying to find the person who could fix her inside, try to fix that wound, that unlovable part of herself that she didn't meet, that felt worthless, that felt like she didn't have a choice. And that's where the tricky early childhood stuff really comes into place, is that if you don't think you have a choice, then how do you make empowered decisions?
Right.
And what I'm talking about here is like you have the power to eradicate that barrier to healing by taking your healing into your own hands, getting the right aligned support by someone who embodies what it is that you want to experience and who isn't afraid to continue doing the work. I'm sorry, but we're past the days of the gurus on pedestals, of the experts who have all the knowledge and that, we're the minions following. I'm personally here on mission to break that paradigm because it's not the next evolution of our greatness.
It's realizing we're all completely empowered and we all have a direct line to source. We all have a direct line to self-healing. There is no conduit that you need. Even the people who perform miraculous healing, I've heard them say, you think of some of these people, John of God or any of these type of people, saying, look, I actually create a container that suspends disbelief long enough for them to heal themselves. And I think that is such a powerful realization for everyone to digest.
Yes. What are you putting your faith in? Put your faith into you.
Yeah.
Put your faith into the wholeness that already exists inside of you, the brilliance that already exists inside of you, the codes that are inside of the little acorn are the codes for the miraculous growth and development of an entire tree. And that's a tree. That's brilliant, beautiful. But that life-giving code is inside every single one of your cells. Don't let anyone tell you that doesn't exist, no matter how bad it's gotten or how bad it feels.
Yep.
If you're living and breathing, it exists inside of you. Yeah, you can put your faith in that. And you don't have to do it alone, right? We're all walking each other home. It's a joy to share this path and this journey with one another. And we get insights and we get to see ourselves and pull each other up and look at our blind spots and get things reflected back to us. But only when we're calibrated inside of ourselves can we actually offer that level of clear reflection for another and for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love that. It's like there's plenty of guides out there. You don't need a guru. A guide may help, but anyone who's really authentic, I feel, is going to be pointing the power right back at you. And it's definitely, I agree with you that is the time that we have come into, where everyone is taking their own power and realizing that it's within them.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. Well, so one of the other things that I'm curious on is, what is your thought on, the relationship between your healing and, a lot of people these days, intuition is becoming such a key factor, and intuition coming online. And for people who are trying to navigate their own personal healing, which is unique to them, how does intuition play into that?
Oh, what a great question. Intuition has to be calibrated. So I do believe that no one knows your body better than you. And you have to become the master of your own discernment. And discernment can only be cultivated with sharpness by calibrating that intuition. So your intuition is going to be calibrated by experience. Definitely, the things that you learn and everything that you take in, and your reasoning capacities, they're all valid, like you learning from lots of different teachers and taking in bigger perspective. It's all helpful, but ultimately come back and check in with your gut, check in with your heart, check in with your body, check in with your mind, check in with all these aspects, and do what I shared to do with the subconscious mind. Because if your subconscious mind is activated by, or is operating rather, by the fragments, then what you think about intuition, what you think is your intuition, might really just be what you're feeling. And the feeling is influenced by the aspect, whatever aspect of your subconscious whatever aspect of your subconscious mind is active at that moment. So if your wounded child is really up for you in that moment, and you're kind of like fear or you're in a little bit of unsure state, when you try to check in with your intuition, you're going to feel, oh, that doesn't feel right. Nope, my intuition's telling me that's not right. But It's really the fear speaking. It's really the inner child that you just checked in with. So being able to know yourself well enough, right? Even swasta, that term that I shared in that sutra, know thyself. Yes, know the greatness that you are, know your soul, but also really know your humanity, really know you're human, and all of the colors and shades and textures of your humanity. Because this is one of the things that I see bypassed so often in spiritual communities, not looking at, we are in these bodies, we are influenced by mind, we still have, capacity, the full range of what all humans experience, all the way down from the deepest guilt, shame, apathy, rage, disgust, self-hatred, self-disgust, masked in all kinds of different things, and pride and courage. And we have access to all of it. Beauty, love, joy. We have access to all of it. And most of us are living in such a narrow range because we have, the powers that be, right, have been repressing us for a long time. So like our society has just become very repressed, emotionally repressed. Yeah. We're only playing one octave on a whole piano. Learning how to consciously play the full piano, the instrument of your body and emotions, because you're human, and that's what healthy bodies do. There's no shame in emotion or feeling it. You just have to know how to move it through appropriately. So when you really meet yourself and learn all these nuanced aspects of yourself, it's like meeting, like every day is a new day. You get to recreate yourself every day. You get to meet these new aspects of yourself. And when you know that, you can tune into the subtleties, and you can get yourself back to a truly empowered state that allows your intuition to be clear and discerning and true. Until then, your intuition is not, you have to get your intuition to a place that is consistently trustable.
Interesting. Yeah. It's, you make me think of something that I've talked to, my brother about before, where, he takes a lot of times and he pins up emotions. And then of course they can come out in weird ways, where he's had panic attacks and things like that in the past, not so much lately, but in past years. Whereas I've always been someone who, like, my emotions come right through me. I let them out. I don't hold them in. And I think that is a big difference between sort of a healthy way to process and an unhealthy way to process. So if anyone out there listening and you tend to, be in the habit of pinning them, or bottling them up inside of you, it's okay to know that it's okay that you can have these varying emotions and to let them out and it's actually a much healthier thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Full permission to be yourself and express. Emotions are like weather patterns. Like we don't judge the weather. We don't, judge the weather. I mean, maybe we do if we live in a really crappy climate. Right. But I'm on Hawaii right now. So it's like, all this beautiful, right? Like the sunshine, the rainbows, and then the wind comes and it's like, and then the rain comes and it's stormy and then it's over. It's just like, sometimes I want to cry and I just cry and let it out. The waterworks come and then, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. But part of the process and what we do in the Enlightened Body System is actually help create less personal enmeshment with the emotions so that you can experience them without identifying with them. Because once we start identifying with them, we can just get caught in the roller coaster of emotions, and then that can spiral us downward too. So there's a separation, a healthy separation. So then I have a relationship between me and the emotions, knowing that I'm in a physical body. I have these emotions. I'm going to feel them. I'm going to express them, but they're not going to define me. And I can choose to turn up the volume on them, and I can choose to release them, and I can choose basically my state of being without bypassing them, without stuffing them. So that's also a really important, deliberate choosing aspect of that.
Right. Absolutely. Well, wow, I can't believe how quickly the time has gone here. We're kind of getting down to it, but I do have one question that I like to go to that is sort of a fun question for me. I love stories of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal story. And so curious if you have anything like that up your sleeve that you feel inspired to share.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
Perfect.
I'm like, which one?
I can hear the mental sifting. Like, where do I go? There's so many ways to go. That's sometimes how I am too. When people ask, I'll sort of start touching on the story, and then someone, tell me more, and I'm like, okay, how much do I tell? Because there's a lot,
Exactly. Yeah, and I know we're getting down to it, so. Yeah, I'll do my best to keep it as brief as possible, but without losing any of the juice, of course.
Of course.
So the image that came to me, I see things in images. So the image that came to me when you asked this was a few weeks ago, laying in a hammock with one of my best friends, swinging under a tree. And I was telling him a story about one of the most life-changing, powerful experiences and excruciating experiences of my life on this island. I'm on Maui, and Maui has a huge volcano, a dormant volcano in the middle of it, Haleakala crater. And it's vast, it's a gigantic crater. And when I was here on Maui last year, I spent 3 days hiking in the crater, and complete backcountry. There's a couple cabins you can rent. It's very hard to get into them, but you basically are backpacking. So you have to pack everything in, everything out. And it's a really, really it's not technically challenging, but it's physically challenging. There's trails and everything. Physically challenging. And I did not know on this trip that I was going to be going. On a backpacking trip. So I didn't bring any gear. It's like summer during the day. It is like winter at night. It's like pretty extensive, in terms of weather.
Variation.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as I'm hiking into this crater, you start at 10,000 feet and then you hike in 3,000 feet to 7,000 feet. You're camping above the clouds the whole time. It's one of the most beautiful places. So beautiful. And
wow.
I'm on these switchbacks going downhill, and I re-trigger an old injury from when I used to be a triathlete back in New York. And my knees start to go out. I'm already in the crater though. So the only way out is to climb 3,000 feet back out. And I have 3 more days of hiking and I'm already in it and I kind of have no choice. So I'm like, well, either I try to climb out now and I don't get to go with my friends, or I, practice everything that I've learned up until this point. And so I had a very, very, very painful experience for the next couple miles. Everyone went ahead without me. They were kind of getting tired of waiting for me. And it was actually perfect because I needed to be by myself because I was in so much pain. And I didn't know how I was going to make it the next 2 days. So I'm walking and I'm really, really feeling it. Excruciating pain coming through my knees every step. And it's getting worse. And so I kind of double over on the side of the trail because I'm emotionally distraught. So I'm like, how am I going to make it out of here? This hurts so much. This sucks. I just want to have fun. And I'm crying. And then I realize that I'm focusing on the pain and it hurts more. So I stand up, I take a few breaths. I probably sang a little bit because that always lifts my spirits. And I started praying out loud. May every step I take, make my body stronger and stronger. May every step I take heal my knees. May every step I take enlighten some politician on the other side of the planet. May every step I take save some child out of trafficking. May every step I take, ensure that all women are safe. May every step I take ensure that, I just started over and over for the next 2 hours. Every single step I took meant something significantly bigger than myself. And I went from a 9 to 10 out of 10 pain with every step to about a 2 to 3 out of 10 pain on every step. And it created a softness. So I'm walking, I had my chin up, and I'm just speaking out loud, praying. Over the next couple days, I developed a couple other techniques that were super powerful because that technique, it was like a very interesting initiation process each day. So there was like new nuances and a lot that I learned about myself, but it carried me across the crater 8 miles.
Wow.
And I ended up climbing out of there. I got out of there and I had an incredible experience, completely transformed my trust in myself, my faith in God, my faith in the universe, my faith in my body, my trust in nature to carry me, like all kinds of things. It was tremendous. So here I am swinging on the hammock a couple of weeks ago, telling one of my best friends this story. And there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it. But I told him this story and then I paused and I just like really quiet and just reflecting on how meaningful that experience was and why some of the deeper reasons why I felt like I was called there. And some things that I really thought were out there and crazy. And I just needed to be witnessed to hear, to share it. And that part of my subconscious mind was still questioning me. And I still was like, oh, this is stupid. Maybe that didn't happen. Maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe it was right. Even though I had so much certainty after that. So I'm laying there, took a breath, and I was like, wow. And then all of a sudden I hear this sound. And it sounds like a squeaky tire, like someone's riding a bicycle down the street. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, we're both looking at each other like, what is that sound? And it's getting louder and louder and louder. And we're like, is that a bike or it's a bird? Oh my God, that's a bird. What is that? And it's like, but it's not any bird that we've ever heard. I can't even impersonate it. That was the worst impersonation ever. I should not try to do that again.
That sounded a little like the bird that was chirping in the background before we turned this recording on and you brought up. I hope this bird's not a problem. Do you remember?
interesting. Maybe it was this bird. I think this bird's one of my spirit animals.
Yeah, he's back.
But no, it's a very, very distinct call. So it's getting louder and louder and louder. We're under this tree, and it's like a full moon, by the way. And when I was in the crater a few months before that, it was a full moon. So it was just super potent. So we're laying under there, and this bird, I can't see it, but we both hear it, and it starts circling the tree with its loud, and it like you couldn't hear anything else. It was so loud, and it's circling the tree. And then it goes off, and then it comes back, and it circles the tree again. And we're both just in awe. And it drops a feather that just comes. It was all in slow motion. It's like coming through the branches of the tree. And I put my hand out. I'm like in awe. I put my hand out, like my palm facing up, and the feather lands in my hand.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That gives me chills. That is incredible.
And I hold this thing in my hand, and I just like hold it to my third eye, and I hold it to my heart, and I just start bawling.
Wow.
Oh my God. Like nature showed up to me. Nature showed up in a way that was confirming the crazy experience that I had when I was in there. And he even said, my friend who's lived on this island for 12 years, he's like, I've never heard a bird like that. I have no idea what that was. Wow. And I asked one of my Hawaiian elders, who's like a dear friend, for her wisdom. And she's like, yeah, I've never seen that happen. She's like, I've seen invisible birds, and I felt their wings flapping with other people who have confirmed it too. Like I've seen them. I've heard them, and I've felt their air, but I've never seen a feather dropped, or like that to that degree, like a real bird.
That then dropped a feather in your hand.
Into my hand through the feather found its way through the branches.
Wow.
So that's my story.
That's powerful.
I didn't know how to shorten that one. That was pretty.
Oh, I'm glad you didn't. And
okay, good.
To me, it's just it adds to the synchronicity. And I wish I had it recorded where literally right before we started, there's this loud bird in the background, and you say to me, Brandon, I hope there's not a problem if this bird, that's outside my window or whatever. And I was like, oh, whatever, we'll make the best of it. And I haven't heard it one time since, but that definitely, it was quite loud before we began, right?
Brandon, one other little synchronicity is that I was invited to that mastermind that you went to at Envision.
Oh, wow.
I didn't make it because I was on Maui because I had just moved here. So,
wow.
Yeah. So another synchronicity where we're running with the same circles of epic people.
We definitely are, and I can definitely see why. You are truly an inspiration, and your light shines through in every word that comes out of your mouth. And I so appreciate you taking the time to come on and connect and share your wisdom and your beautiful story. I would like to ask if there's anything you'd like to leave. Well, for one, a couple things. Yeah. One is, what's the best way for people to connect with you? The other, is there anything in particular that you'd like to leave with the audience on, what they can do to start down the path of resolving, any emotional, root cause problems or anything like that? And of course, how they can, connect with you and continue to follow your work. Absolutely.
So there was two questions. So first, where they can best reach me. So my website, AliciaLynnDiaz.com. You can also just simply email me and my assistant at hello@AliciaLynnDiaz.com. We'd always love to hear from you. And sometimes that personal connection is deeply appreciated in the virtual world these days. So that's just hello@AliciaLynnDiaz.com and my website. And then, I think I would love to gift your audience a training. I do run live webinars weekly on the 10 questions to ask yourself, to basically to determine if emotional trauma is influencing your physical health and how you can create more vitality and aliveness. So I can share that link with you if you want to link it in the show notes or something like that.
Sure.
That would be really great to see some of you guys on there. And I think that would be a really great start, right? I'd say, yes, the power exists inside of you, and it is exponentially enhanced when you can have an embodied guide that you trust support you in the process, whether that's me or anyone that you resonate with. I'd really just highly recommend that you pursue getting the support to look at those blind spots and make sure that you choose someone that you really believe and feel embodies what you desire to experience, and that doesn't just have the head knowledge or doesn't just access it from, the physical side or only the energetic side. Like, really find people that you respect in terms of their mastery and in terms of their embodiment. So get the support. We can do it alone, but we don't have to. And it's much more of a joy, and it's much more efficient when we can do it, and when we can heal back into wholeness in community and with that support. So that would
Absolutely.
be my closing advice, if you will.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Alicia, this has been such a pleasure. My last and final question here. I always start with the same question and end with the same question. And my final question is, in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Alicia Diaz?
Oh, in 60 seconds or less. Oh, it's got to be like my same answer to the beginning.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's love. What's the point? Why are we here?
I'm with you on that.
To learn how to love each other, love ourselves, to enjoy the experience of life, to bring heaven onto earth through us, through our interactions, through our connections, through our relationships. Making a meaningful impact on this planet starts with just your relationship with yourself and with the people around you that you care about. Deep question, Brandon. I appreciate your potency.
Well, I appreciate your answer. It is back to my favorite quote. Love is the answer. Now, what was the question?
Yeah, I love that quote.
Awesome. We are on the same page. Alicia, you are a beautiful reflection. Thank you so, so much for coming on and sharing. I truly appreciate you and look forward to hopefully connecting in 3D at some point. Perhaps,
yes,
actually, you're not that far away from where I'm located if you're in San Diego. So hopefully that will happen.
Between San Diego and Hawaii. So I'll actually
that's right. You said you just...
San Diego. Yeah, but I'll be in San Diego the end of this month even. So...
Oh, yes. I would absolutely love to connect. And if not here in California, perhaps, who knows, perhaps at the Superhero Academy Mastermind meetup next year, right?
Yeah.
So that would be wonderful. Well, Alicia, thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too. And I'm so inspired by everything you're doing, and just so much love and blessings to everyone listening to this. It's such an honor to be invited into your sphere, and I hope that you received value from spending time here. So much fun. It was so much fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm very confident that everyone who listened to you has received value. So thank you again, Alicia. You have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your night.
Take care. Bye.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes, since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting. Your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.